Why, hello, gentlemen. On today's show, we're talking Josh Hader, ladies and gentlemen, and this weekend series, the Clown Show. It's rearing its head just a tiny bit, not a full blown clown show like last year, but Josh Hader, man, what the heck happened to you? We're going to be talking about him and more on today's show. You know what you're listening to. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, at least sometimes every day, for Monday, August 29th. As always, I'm your host, with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You might be familiar with my baseball-related work at Just a Writer. Great website. You should definitely go check that out. And also, just thank you for making Locked On Padres your first listen every day. I know that I'm not always immediate. I've been a little bit slow lately. We're going to talk about that later. But of course, guys, also a reminder, follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres. And of course, if you want to see whatever shirt I'm rocking. And today I'm being a little bit of a homer. I'm a company man today. If you want to see what shirt I'm rocking, go check out the YouTube, Locked On Padres. And oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm so excited. This is great. It's great. Oh, man, it's awesome. Guys, we got to talk about Josh Hader. We're going to be talking about this weekend series as a whole for sure against the Kansas City Royals. But the biggest news, without a doubt, is Josh Hader. He's trending. I recently wrote an article about him that'll be up actually on Just Baseball soon, where I kind of talk about all my longtime listeners of the show probably, or not even long time, but month time since the trade happened. Listeners might be familiar with, but still, if you want to check that out, it's probably going to be up by the time this episode drops. And we have a lot to discuss because this isn't, I think the thing with Josh Hader is that what's happened is it reminds me just a tiny bit of the situation with Blake Snell last year. What I mean by that isn't necessarily on the count of specific skill set or even the assets that were traded or whatnot, and obviously even their position, but more of this vibe of it seems like the Padres very clearly traded for Josh Hader and then also Blake Snell at the absolute height of their value. Maybe a little bit less with Josh Hader because the last time Blake Snell pitched pre-Padres was in that World Series game where he infamously was pulled despite absolutely just destroying the Dodgers because some kid wearing a Princeton jersey, rocking a laptop said, "Oh, no, wait, you got to take him out." Probably said so, right? And then let's bring in the closer that's been terrible for us. So anyway. I think that it reminds me of the Padres once again, and AJ Preller and company deserve blame for buying high on a piece that you didn't look into maybe why the team was trading him, right? There was a little bit of suspicion, and that was my thing when the trade happened. I gave the trade a B plus, B minus to a B plus, or a B to B plus. I forgot what the heck I said. I was a little bit too much of a coward to say B and go a little bit lower, so I'd say B plus. I didn't want people getting mad at me. That one of my big things was the Milwaukee Brewers just don't miss on trades. They don't. This is not a second, even third rate organization, right? Like this is a team that traded for Christian Yelich at the right time. They made good moves to acquire Corbin Burns, right? They developed talent pretty well. They don't miss too often on trades. Trent Grisham with the Padres has not turned out all that great, and they gave up Luis Arias and Eric Lauer, and not that those players are all timers, but they clear something, right? The Tampa Bay Rays, right, when the Padres traded for Emilio Pagan, right, and for Blake Snell last year, there was a vibe of, oh my God, underperforming. You are absolutely falling apart. Like, I've already given up on you being maybe at the peak of your power with Blake Snell, but you're telling me you're going to pitch to like a 5 ERA? And that's the case with Josh Hader right now, who currently has, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I don't even, it's hard for me to say this. Josh Hader, probably the universally believed to be the best closer in all of baseball, currently has a 23.14 ERA with the Padres. His lifetime ERA, for the record, is 2.78. That's how. It's not even a Taylor Rogers situation where a pitcher's just not having the best of seasons and he's blowing a bunch of games. He's not throwing strikes. He's throwing balls that Luis Campusano can't even catch, or whoever the heck has caught him before in previous blowups. These pitches that aren't even competitive. Nobody's swinging at his pitches either. He just looks lost out there. And sure, you can chalk it up as mental. But for my thing is, the Brewers don't make mistakes. It was weird that he became available suspiciously close to the deadline that we were getting rumors. It's not like, say, Andrew Benintendi, right, or David Robertson, to use another closer, where those guys have been in trade rumors for a while, right? Everybody knew those guys are probably going to get moved. Josh Hader, it just kind of sprung up. And that's weird considering that he had all of these blowups before being traded to the Padres, right? And he had never had anything like that before. And on Sunday, he did it against the Kansas City Royals. The Padres end up losing the game 15-7. Now, not all of it is on Josh Hader. We'll get to you, Mr. Manaea, in a second. Don't think for a second you're being spared of the roast session that is coming your way. But with Josh Hader, it is very, he doesn't even last an inning. He doesn't even get 2 outs. 6 earned runs on 5 hits, 2 walks, and a strikeout. Whatever. On the year, his 6.52 ERA with a 1.47 WHIP, and he's getting hit. He's getting bashed. I don't know if I forgot if he's given up a home run yet, but it doesn't even matter because he's giving up singles and he's just walking every batter that it comes across the plate. Obviously, everybody's talked about, he's been removed from the closer role. That is seriously becoming a thing of, I don't know if he's going to go back to it anytime soon because he's been horrible. And I actually got a DM from Timothy Pike on Twitter, Southtown legend on Twitter, who mentioned to me, he said, Martinez had some issues starting earlier in the year, referring to Nick Martinez, of course, and he seems to really have found it in the bullpen. Do you think it'd be a good idea to have him start the next 2 rotations and have Manaea come out of the pen to see if he can get it figured out? That's where we're at right now. We're wondering, is Nick Martinez just the closer right now? Like, does Nick Martinez have to be a closer? A player that I think is one of the most underrated on the Padres and one of the more underrated players in baseball this year just because of what the expectations were heading in. I was very infamously critical of the signing when they brought him in, but then, about a month before the season, I was like, whatever. He's a 5-star. Maybe he learned some things. He throws harder than he was ever since he spent his time in Japan. So he does throw a little bit harder, and it clearly has worked, right? He's been a very effective reliever for the Padres, a team that has just not had a lot of luck with relievers this year, clearly. I think that AJ Preller, as much credit as you have to give him with Juan Soto, as much credit you have to give him with even Josh Bell, who I tweeted today has been performing remarkably better ever since I roasted him on Twitter with that the Scooby-Doo meme with the taking off the mask, and then it was Eric Hosmer and not Josh Bell. Ever since then, 258, 361, 516 slash line with a 149 WRC plus. So he's improving, right? So yes, don't get me wrong. I still think the Padres won the trade deadline. But AJ Preller probably got a little bit too trigger happy. I've been very critical of Josh Hader. I tweeted out that he's cooked about 2 weeks ago, and clearly that seems to not have changed. And it's concerning, ladies and gentlemen. It's concerning. But before we continue to talk about Josh Hader and the rest of this weekend's happenings, I guess we must say, let me just give you guys all seriousness. I joke about how if I made a mistake that, I must have been high or whatever the heck, right? But got to give you a little bit of a message from the NHTSA about, driving under the influence and whatnot, guys. If you think it's okay to drive stoned, well, the truth is your reaction time slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. So in all seriousness, guys, stop kidding yourself. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Take it very seriously, ladies and gentlemen. Be careful out there. But let's keep it rolling, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Just a little, not to get things too downer for everybody listening, but I had to put that out there. Very important message. Let's now talk about the rest of the weekend series. I usually don't like doing weekend recaps. Look, the Padres still won 2 out of the 3 games that happened this weekend. They won 13-5 on Friday, which was rad, and saw Robert Suarez actually get the W in that one, despite a very poor starting pitching performance from Joe Musgrove. For the record, ever since Joe Musgrove's contract extension, 4.28 ERA, 1.32 WHIP, and a 4.30 FIP. So I'm going to give him one more start because against the Royals, that was concerning. I still think that overall he's just seeing a regression to the mean. I think he maybe had pitched a little bit above his level to start the season, but it shouldn't be a tremendous regression. But I'm going to give it one more start before I potentially bully him on Twitter, which worked with Josh Bell, in fairness, guys. So my tweets of bullying, they're for a reason, guys. Come on, here you go. They won that game though, 13-5, which was great. Juan Soto wasn't back in the lineup for that game, but we had Mr. Will Myers actually be kind of the hero of that game and then have a joke about saying nice because it was their 69th win. Will Myers, of course, a national treasure. Will Myers in that game, 3 RBIs, a home run. That was very cool. Jay Cronenworth, who seemingly all year has just been unable to decide whether or not he wants to be a star again. Like every time we think he's going to ramp back up to being a star, he kind of falls back down. He's just not slugging the ball. 388 slugging compared to 460 and 477 the past 2 seasons. He's just not slugging the ball. The walk rate's fine, 340 on base, but man, come on, Jake, we need something for him. But he did get 2 RBIs in this game and a home run as well. And even Ha-Seong Kim. That's right, Ha-Seong Kim. It was the Ha-Seong Kim game. Give the guy some credit. 3 for 6 with 5 RBIs, a double, and a home run. It was awesome to see for the guy. You can see the energy of the Padres when it's awesome. It's just it's so good. It makes me so happy whenever Ha-Seong Kim does well and you see the team so excited for him, especially for a player that I tweeted out he'd been performing very well. Someone responded he doesn't have really any home runs over that stretch aside from this one on Friday. And my thing is, the bottom line with Ha-Seong Kim is he's evolved into being an above average, or at least an average major league at bat. And if you combine that with the defense, solid MLB player. And when you take into account that he's not really supposed to be the starting shortstop because the other guy, the goober, as I'm going to be calling him from now on this podcast, not going to say him by name, the shortstop goober who got suspended for PED usage, wasn't expected to be the starting shortstop. So if you just view him as this like cool, awesome weapon off the bench and maybe not necessarily an everyday player, Ha-Seong Kim has been awesome for this team. Not everybody has to be a superstar. That's not the only way to win, ladies and gentlemen. It's not, ladies and gentlemen. And then on Saturday, the Padres won a little bit of a close one, 4-3. Nick Martinez ends up getting the save here. Talked about him already, and whether or not he is a guy that could be entering the rotation with Sean Manaea struggling. Well, I think there's a couple things with that. Number one is that, and by the way, Will Myers also homered on Saturday, which was rad. With the Nick Martinez thing, he was an okay starter, right? Like he was okay. I view him more as this Swiss Army man that if they need him to start, he could. If they need him to be a setup man, if they need him to be like the piggyback off of, say, a short Blake Snell start where he only goes 3 innings, and they're like, all right, Martinez, we need you to go 2 or 3. He can do that. He can be the closer. I like that he's kind of got this undefined role with the Padres. But his contract has some weird stipulations where if he reaches a certain amount of starts, then certain kickers come in and whatnot. And I wonder if the Padres might be manipulating that. I don't think they are, but that is worth pointing out about whether or not they want to see him start games again and rack up more innings that could potentially kick in for him. It should be mentioned that Nick Martinez has a very Nick Martinez friendly contract, and he signed this 4-year, 25 deal that basically allows him to opt out after every year or opt in. It's up to him. It's a player option. And the reason that I didn't like the contract, and even though I changed my tune on liking him as a player heading into the season, I still didn't like the contract because if Martinez stayed the way he was back when he was in Major League Baseball with the Texas Rangers, then he was going to be this guy that was attached to the Padres for a while. And if he did well, like he is now, he could opt out and potentially get more money from another team or even the Padres themselves. So that's why I didn't like it. And I was wondering, how did he earn himself this type of contract? You know what I mean? For a guy that this isn't, a Max Scherzer. This isn't a guy who has earned that, like, yeah, you do what I say type of deal. But nonetheless, this has been performing really well in the bullpen, and considering the disaster that Josh Hader has been, and considering that we don't know what's going on with Drew Pomeranz and his rehab necessarily, I'd be a little bit surprised to see Sean Manaea return to the bullpen, or at least go to the bullpen. And granted, he has been terrible. On Sunday, he gave up, what was it, 6 earned runs, and almost all of them, actually all of them coming in the first inning, 10 hits over 4 innings. He's got a 4.9 ERA on the year. Let me be clear, I still stand by the trade when it happened. I view him as a 4 or 5, and since he is a 4 or 5 on his team, I figured, why not? There's not much he has to do, right? Wrong, Javier Reyes, you idiot, right? He has just been really disastrous. And I do want to talk about one thing really quickly. And that is, I saw, Don and Mud. We love them. God bless them. Like, they're the best. Don Rosillo, Mark Grant. You guys are the best. But they were talking about during the game a little bit about how Campusano wasn't setting up right. And he had his glove low before the pitch came in, basically. And then he would adjust the ball to the thing, or the glove to the ball. And they were saying how that might just drive you mad as a catcher and whatnot. And my thing is, look, I don't understand why Luis Campusano has become this guy that everyone's just out on. He's never really had all that much of a chance. He actually raised his batting average by 100 points because he went 2 for 4 in the game, which, by the way, shows you how little opportunity. If you're able to change your batting average that quickly with just one game, shows how little opportunities had. And it's not like Jorge Alfaro and Austin Nola have knocked it out of the park. Love Alfaro GOAT, as we all call him, of course. But it's not like this guy's been amazing, right? And Austin Nola, not very good either, right? So it's been making me wonder, why is the top catching prospect in your system, and once upon a time just an overall top level prospect in baseball, at least somewhat, who'd been raking in AAA, why is there just this unwillingness to call him up? Personally, I have heard a couple rumors and reports that maybe there's some personality problems and whatnot, that there's some character problems and whatnot, and this doesn't have anything to do with the marijuana arrest. It's just some separate things. Can't verify the character things. Obviously, I'm not in the clubhouse and whatnot, but is that what it is? Maybe, but is it that bad you don't want to call him up, right? I don't get that. And as a good friend of the show, Josh Landis said, he tweeted at me mentioning a couple of interesting facts that I think you guys should be made aware of. Austin Nola has thrown out 5 of 46 runners. And this was back on, hold on, what is today? So Sunday, Saturday. This was back on Saturday, 49 after tonight's game against the Royals. He'll have 2 more runners. Alfaro is 5 of 21. It feels like the opposing team has a runner in scoring position once they reach first, if they have even just average speed. And of course, he's got that data from Fangraphs. Might be a good talking point for the next podcast. I think Campy is like 20 of 55 in AAA. Do you think it could translate? So a couple things. First of all, I don't want to pretend that I know all the ins and outs of necessarily how people will translate to the majors, because I do not like predicting things when it comes to young players, just because I think that, we don't have a crystal ball, that whole spiel from Moneyball, right? Like, I try not to do that. That being said, from who I've talked to, my good buddy Aram Layton was telling me that Luis Campusano, the one thing that was kind of holding him down back in 2020 was he still needs to mold out and develop as a defensive catcher. And look, like I said, I'm not a superstar expert analytics guru. I try to make the show a little bit more fun. I don't like to boggle it down with too many numbers, and also because I'm not that smart. But I think it's worth pointing out that Manaea, there was some critiques of Campusano's catching, and some people were blaming this on him. There's a couple things with that. First of all, as some other people tweeted about, this whole keeping the glove away, that's something that a lot of catchers do. And there's also multiple times when Sean Manaea was just missing his zone entirely, right? And then most importantly, forget the analyzing of the pitching performance. The idea that you're going to come up and just blame Luis Campusano automatically. Again, I don't know where this hate started from for Luis Campusano. I really don't understand why everybody's like, yeah, he's no good, and we're annoyed with him, and they're ready to blame him for things. Have you not watched Sean Manaea's starts since like beginning of August and maybe even the end of July? Like, do I have to bring up his starts since then? Let's see. Okay. July 25th against the Detroit Tigers. He gives up 4 earned runs, 9 runs, only 4 earned though, because there was some errors, in 3 1/3 innings. He does okay against Minnesota, 6 innings, 2 earned runs allowed. Then against the Dodgers, he gets absolutely torched, 8 earned runs over 4 innings on 10 hits. Against San Francisco Giants, 3 earned runs, 4 total across 5 innings. Against the Marlins, Doesn't give up too many runs, but only 4 innings, 3 earned runs against the Marlins. That's right. The team that doesn't have Jazz Chisholm right now, that their best player is like Garrett Cooper. I don't even know if he's back. The team that's got Rojas at shortstop who can hit worth a lick. The team that's got what's his name that we stole Alfaro from, and they've got Jacob Stallings there who can't hit worth a lick either. Yeah, he didn't even pitch that well against them. Against the Nationals, he was okay. 7 innings, only 1 earned run. Congratulations on pitching well against the Nationals. And then you have this start against Colorado. He got lit up at Seattle at one point. He's been bad for a while. So the idea that we're going to blame Luis Campusano for Sean Manaea's blow up yesterday, when you can clearly see that Manaea was lit mid, and heck, getting batters to chase his sinker has not been working all that well. So that didn't work on Sunday either. The fact that we're going to blame Luis Campusano just feels like scapegoating and not accepting the fact that despite kind of a little bit of a love for him, because Manaea's got the same kind of hairstyle that I'm rocking these days, you know what I mean? It's all poofy and crazy, that we're just ready to blame Luis Campusano. I don't understand that whatsoever. I imagine Padres ownership and managing and whatnot, they have some more inside info that I do, that maybe the players don't like pitching for him. I don't know. But bottom line is, it is weird. It is weird for a team that is tiny bit spiraling for them to be kind of having this discourse sprout that Campusano isn't a good defensive catcher. I don't know. I think that he needs time. He'll develop. He'll learn. Right? That's what happens when you're a prospect. Why is this the only player? We did that with Abrams. When Abrams was called up and couldn't hit worth anything, we were like, all right, give him time. When Campusano gets called up against Kenley Jansen to start his career in big games against the Dodgers in the bottom of the 9th, and he doesn't succeed against Kenley Jansen, we're all like, he's no good. I don't understand how this happened. I really don't. And Campusano, leave the man alone. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. He can certainly be better than what Austin Nola certainly has given the Padres, especially since he hasn't been all that good at throwing out runners, as Josh attested to. What are we doing? What are we doing? I just don't understand it. Very weird stuff. Guys, we're going to keep it moving, though. We're going to keep it moving. I like to move it. I don't want to recap the rest of the games. I already mentioned, the Manaea start. I already mentioned the Joe Musgrove start. Already mentioned that they had a pretty good start. Was it from Yu Darvish, by the way? Again, I really do believe Yu Darvish has had such a underrated year. He gave up 3 earned runs in the first inning against the Royals, which freaked everybody out, but then was good the rest of the way. The consistency, the whip is under 1. Darvish, genuinely believe he's not an underrated player, but because of the name value, right, and all that, but he has had an underrated season, in my opinion. He's been very effective, and I think I owe him an apology, because I remember I was not dogging him, but kind of mocking the trade a little bit early on in the year. With the whole, would you rather have Eric Lauer and assets or Yu Darvish for as much money he makes, right? Darvish has clearly stepped up big time this year. I want to talk a little bit about the vibe I've been getting with this Padres team. A little bit of a fear. And this might freak some people out, but I just want to talk about the idea of Juan Soto and trading assets, right? Let's be clear. Juan Soto has been exactly as advertised. He homered, by the way, on Sunday. Manny also had 2 homers, which I didn't mention because there was some other pressing things to deal with when it came to Josh Hader. But Juan Soto has been pretty phenomenal for the Padres. I mean, yes, he had a couple games that he had to sit out, but with the Padres, he's raised his batting average and he's raised everything. He went from hitting 246 to 296 with the Padres in 20 games. He has a 438 on base, 493 slugging. He's been freaking great. 3 homers, like, it's awesome. The only thing about him is sometimes his defense. I know he made a nice little catch on, what was it, Saturday? But bottom line is he needs to improve defensively. I still think he's in the 1 percentile when it comes to outs above average. So he needs to improve that, and I think he will. But this isn't about him. Instead, I want to talk about 2 things. Number 1, I disagree with the point that the Padres have always, Padres fans have always been told that hugging prospects will yield results, and it doesn't. That is true. I understand why fans are like, what the heck? You're always telling us. Javi, Robert Hassel, CJ Abrams, James Wood, and Robert Gasser, and Igor Rosario, and Esteury Ruiz, all these guys. They're unknown commodities, and we're always told to wait on the unknown commodities. I do agree. I believe that the Padres, while I've not been a fan of the team as long as some others, before people mock me in the comments, It is true. They tend to hug prospects, and then they haven't always panned out. This is a team that has not been all that good basically since 2006, pre 2020. We're not good for a very long time. They're hoping that Jose Pirela, who hits like for a high batting average or whatever, that he's like their most exciting player. Seth Smith, Tyson Ross for a little bit, Andrew Kashner, a disaster, right? That them being told we have to hold on to assets is kind of what they don't like, and that we need to trade for stars because we never do. Here's where I disagree. This time is different. And that's why I thought that the Padres didn't need, quote, let me be clear, need to trade. The way the game of baseball works, fortunately, this is not the NBA where when you trade for Kevin Durant, all of a sudden you're a title contender. Or when you trade for Drew Holiday, screw all the other pieces, get Giannis as point guard, we can go win the title. This is not a team like the Golden State Warriors. This is not a team like the Toronto Raptors who just say, screw it, we'll trade whatever, go get Kawhi Leonard. It's oftentimes true that the stars do not necessarily run the game. You do want to have them. Let's be very clear. Even cheapskate teams like the Milwaukee Brewers, they still got their star in Christian Yelich. He's not anymore, but they do have to go for a player like that to take you to the next level, right? The Cleveland Guardians, they have Jose Ramirez, despite the fact that they traded Lindor and they traded a bunch of their players and slowly are, entered this rebuild era. They do have that one ground, centerpiece to build around. And that's the key here that I disagree with, right? The Padres had their superstars. So if the Padres did not have Fernando Tatis Jr. and they did not have Manny Machado, I would agree with that point of stop hugging the prospects, let's go trade for a star. I would really agree with that, right? And I'm not trying to get super philosophical and esoteric about my analysis here, but I think it needs to be said that when you have those two guys, then it becomes about building depth, not just trying to build a fantasy team. In my opinion, that does not mean I'm against the Juan Soto trade. I just think it's worth pointing out the counter argument to just having those guys come up from your farm. You don't like Trent Grisham? Well, you have Robert Hassel to look forward to. You don't like Will Myers? Well, he's off the books, first of all, after this year. And second, well, you've got James Wood. You've got CJ Abrams to play second. You worried about how Jake Cronenworth isn't slugging the ball anymore? Nice to have CJ Abrams in your system, isn't it? Right? When you have all these guys, you're worried about the pitching, you got Robert Gasser. You don't like the catching situation, you have Campusano. All these things, right? That's what it takes to build a team. And I think that there is a misconception by Padres fans, and I don't care if you guys make fun of me with this. There is a misconception by Dodgers fans that the Dodgers are bought, not built. That is slightly true. Yes, the Dodgers traded some assets and they got Mookie Betts, but a lot of teams probably weren't going to be able to pay him. So that happened. With Freddie Freeman, of course. With Trey Turner, probably plays a little bit into it, right? Because they were able to trade for him knowing, well, if we do lose him after the year of control, we can certainly pay him, right? So yes, money is huge. They still have the highest, salary in baseball next to the Mets. Like, I get it. That is a big thing with Justin Turner. But think about the rest of their players, right? Clayton Kershaw, that's farm, baby, They make a good trade for Chris Taylor. That's just them making good, savvy moves. Cody Bellinger, when he wins that MVP, right? There's a lot of players here. Julio Urias, Dustin May, who sounds like he's going to be awesome, right? Brusdar Graterol has some moments every now and then. And who's the other pitcher that they have? Andrew Heaney, just a smart little trade, right? Anyone could have had Andrew Heaney. Tyler Anderson, right? There are a lot of players here that aren't just a bought team, right? And I think that that's a misconception that the Padres fans have, which results in Padres fans saying, screw holding on to the prospects. I just want to go get the star, because that's what the Dodgers do. It's like, well, on the contrary, go look at the Padres roster. With the exception of Eguy Rosario, maybe, right? Like, everyone here on this team was acquired through a trade, right? So that's my thing. And maybe even Luis Campusano. Like, that's my big issue. The Padres are actually the ones that have been doing this quote unquote bought, not built type of thing. Now, don't get me wrong, trading your assets is still part of building a team, but I do find that a little bit annoying. I think that Padres fans are mistaken there. And I think that while the Juan Soto trade has been phenomenal, it is worth pointing out that there are other ways to improve your team. Dodgers, they went out and got Joey Gallo. I'm not saying he's a star, but they said this guy's underperforming. Let's go for him and just get a solid guy. Your Trey Mancini's of the world, your Robbie Grossman's of the world, right? These solid players. And that's my other thing with the Josh Hader trade. It is a reminder that what I said before the deadline is I did not think they needed a superstar closer. Go get Jimenez on Detroit Tigers. Go get Zach Jackson on Oakland, right? Go get Floro or Anthony Bass on the Marlins, guys that certainly wouldn't cost nearly as much as Josh Hader. Not that we know for sure that Robert Gasser and Estuary Ruiz are going to be awesome, but wouldn't you rather have those guys back? And also Taylor Rogers has been good over his past few innings. He's been much better, which I think is okay. He's not a total nuclear disaster, right? That's my thing. That's my thing. And I will say that the Padres, man, they you got to hope. You got to hope that they can right the ship. I still think they can. We got to keep in mind that they still have a hold of a playoff spot. Thank you, wild card. But I just want everybody to sit on that. That's my take of the day. Remember that is not the only way to win baseball, is to just trade for stars, right? They traded a lot. They go out and get Josh Bell and Brandon Drury. I wrote in my deadline reaction piece that, sometimes just this amount of turnover, you can't build baseball teams like a fantasy team. Remember Upton and Will Myers and Craig Kimbrell and all those guys? Yeah, they were okay, but sometimes there's something to be said for slowly upgrading your team a little bit, right? And having a little bit more of a built foundation, right? The Padres had those stars. If they did not have Tatis and Manny Machado, I would agree with the notion that you're just prospect hugging if you don't want the Padres to trade those guys, right? But they do. So that's my thing. Love that Juan Soto's here. I still do that trade 10 times out of 10, but I do take issue with the notion that that's the only thing they were supposed to do. It was win or lose, get Juan Soto. That's it, because that's what the Dodgers do. I disagree with that. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, that won't be the only take that you might have some beef with me over, because for tomorrow's episode, we're going to be talking about Fernando Tatis Jr., his legacy, and talking about a little bit of a mock trade that got me flamed on Twitter the other day, which was honestly very enjoyable. I loved it. So we're going to be talking about that on tomorrow's episode. Then Wednesday, perhaps, or Thursday, recapping the series against the Giants. It's going to be a great series. Hopefully they can get some W's out of it. The Giants have been floundering and spinning and around and going haywire, right? So hopefully the Padres can bounce back. I believe that the starter for tonight's game, let me just check it up really quickly, is Mike Clevenger. He's been a little bit shaky of late, so I'd like to see a really dominant start from him. Granted, he's going to need to be, because it's against Carlos Rodon tonight. So also, last point before we close the show out. First of all, go check out Locked On MLB with my man Sully. He was on the last episode we did, so go check him out. He talks about all things baseball across any team. Also, I am working on trying to improve video quality a little bit. I'm going to mention that on tomorrow's episode as well. That look, I'm trying to improve the video quality, so hopefully that gets a little bit better, at least for the time being, to make a little bit of an improvement for all my YouTube folk that listen to the show / watch the show. But yeah, with that all being said, that about does it, ladies and gentlemen, for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, at LO_Padres, Locked On Padres on YouTube. And until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful, my very faithful homies. Take care.